Indians are buying oil from Brahmins makes no sense. And I would say that we should learn to ignore these things. Why is the president tweeting? There are multiple stories. One is that he wants to win a Nobel Prize. What is disappointing is that the last 25 years, from Clinton onward, they've worked on building the relationship, and it seems to basically go down the drain in 25 hours. Now, you do have a certain amount of rhetoric coming out of the White House, especially people like Peter Navarro. And I think that's more from ignorance about India. When you call Indians are buying oil from Brahmins, makes no sense. And I would say that we should learn to ignore these things and continue, which is a bigger relationship between the two countries, and I think maintain that momentum.
On Monday, US President Donald Trump doubled down on his criticism on India, calling trade ties with the country a totally one-sided disaster. And he also claimed that India has offered to cut its tariff to zero. They were only the claims. How do you look at such comments, sir?
Well, you have to understand there are comments which the president makes, and you have to take it with a certain weightage to that itself or non-weightage to that. I think it's important to understand that when you have certain truth social or tweet coming out, some may have substance, others may not have substance. I think people in India are mature. They understand it's a proud nation, a sovereign nation. And I think it has to do what it has to do, what is good for the citizen and what's good for the country.
So you are here in Delhi. What have you heard, or what feedback have you heard from even in Washington DC from the CEOs that you meet when it comes to economic relationship between the two countries? Because the Indian exports are facing problems, and are the American exporters also facing the heat?
No, obviously you have to understand that it's not just only Indian exports. Think about companies which have set up their manufacturing here, and the components they're building in India are part of the overall supply chain. So when those components come to the US, they are facing 50% duty, and that does not make it competitive. So both sides are suffering for this unreasonable secondary tariff put on India. But overall, the sentiment in India, as in the US among the CEOs, and I've talked to almost 60, 70 CEOs the last 3 weeks, is very positive. They are not slowing down their investment in India. They're not slowing down their process of building supply chain in India. So I think from that perspective, the confidence, the trust, and the faith in India continues among the US CEOs.
Right. So I want to know your view and understand the factors on why do you think Trump is damaging the relationship. It is because India is not budging to the tariffs or is he not getting a room for his claims on getting a ceasefire between India and Pakistan? What factors do you think is behind these?
Well, you have to understand that number one is India has not reacted in any negative manner on some of the truth social tweets coming out of the president. I think India has maintained, including the Prime Minister, a sense of dignity, a sense of basically focus on what's good for India and not made any comments on the tweets itself. Why is the president tweeting? There are multiple stories. One is that he wants to win a Nobel Prize. The other is basically the advice he's getting is incorrect. But I think what is disappointing is that the last 25 years, from Clinton onward, they've worked on building the relationship, and it seems to basically go down the drain in 25 hours. And I think it is important that we stay committed, because US needs India, India needs US. From that perspective, from a geopolitical perspective, economic perspective, we have 5.5 million Indian Americans in the US, so people-to-people perspective also. So I think the relationship is strong. It will continue. Yes, you have certain tweets coming which are damaging, and I think the secondary tariffs are uncalled for. I think we have to make every effort to see how we can take them out.
Right. So Prime Minister Modi was in Tianjin yesterday. He met with President Xi. It was his first visit in 7 years. How do you see India-China relationship moving forward?
Well, you have seen historically, China has bigger ambitions. Its ambitions are basically do not tie with India's ambition. So China will always treat India not as an equal partner. And you have to understand that India's exports to China are roughly $15 billion and it has a trade deficit of almost $100 billion with China. Whereas with the U.S. market, India has basically a surplus with the U.S. itself. The people-to-people relationships, the value systems are same itself. So yes, there is an aberration relationship with U.S., but I don't see long-term relationship going to the same level with China as it is with the U.S.
And what about India-Russia relationship? We also had a bilateral with Russian President Putin, and after that we have heard from Donald Trump and from Navarro saying India is getting in bed with the authoritarians like Russia and China. So how do you see India-Russia relationship moving forward?
Well, India has to do what's good for India. India does not dictate other country is democratic or authoritarian. Russia historically has been a friend of India, and it has stood by India, and so if India has to meet with them, deal with them, partner with them, that's India's right. So I think other countries should not dictate India as to what it needs to be done. So from that perspective, I think Prime Minister meeting with Putin was the appropriate meeting from every aspect.
And there were also talks of getting an overhaul on H-1B visas, which might affect Indian workers as well. How do you see that?
I think H-1B, when you look at it, almost 70% of the H-1B goes to Indians itself. But most of them are sponsored by U.S. companies, companies such as Google, Microsoft, Meta, and others. You have to understand that they are on a lottery-based system. So that means the Indians who go there, they get an average salary of $66,000 on the H-1B. And when you look at from a broader perspective, the median income in the U.S. is around $75,000. The reform is going to focus more on the capability, qualification, and the compensation. And between the two, you get point system, and then you qualify for H-1B. So I think it works in favor of Indians who are looking at leveraging H-1B, that they will get higher salaries, and more qualified people will be able to get access rather than just waiting through the lottery system, where qualified people will not be able to make it.
So just last question. We have also heard some optimistic comments from Nikki Haley, John Bolton, and even Besant, who have said that India and Washington DC can have a relationship that can be moving forward. How do you see these optimistic comments, especially when at a time the relationship is getting strained?
Well, I would say that the relationship is not getting strained. When you look at people to people, look at the business community, you look at the legislative side, they're all very optimistic. Yes, you have people like Jake Sullivan, Nikki Haley, John Bolton talking, but when you go down, more and more people are talking as to why this relationship is going through this challenges on secondary tariff. I think it's important. I think for it to come back to track, the secondary tariff have to be taken out, so at least India and the US can work together, because this is impacting millions of workers here in India itself, and it's impacting businesses in the US. So it's more disruptive for both sides than being constructive for any side itself. So I think from that perspective, hopefully common sense will prevail and you'll see a better relationship moving forward.